Um, Good evening. Welcome to the show. Get rolling. Um, as always, I start off the show by saying thank you for tuning in. Of all the things you could be doing on a Thursday, you choose to be here listening to me try to break things down and make it make sense. Um, we omit the logic because, as my mom used to say, if common sense was common, people wouldn't do the silly things they do. So said all that to say, I'm truly humbled that you guys tune in every Thursday, week in and week out, to hear me kind of break things down. As I was alluding to earlier, I had a show planned, and I start seeing some of the things that's been happening, and I want to call this show self hate and self annihilation. And annihilation is just a fancy word when used in reference to a group of people. It's like genocide. So we're doing this whole genocide on ourselves, and I could no longer ignore it. So with that being said, I don't know what's going to come out tonight. You can see I'm trying to be jovial, but this sense of is really taking over my consciousness. So bear with me, folks. Bear with me. Um, there were two things that really motivated this whole little exchange or this whole um, sense of gloominess that's hanging over my head. One is the number of people, black men, that's going places and just, well, black and brown men, going places and just killing people without provocation. Um, and the other is this thing where the brat and her wife. And the reason it touched me is because, and I said this before, but I'm gonna start the show off with this little history lesson. A man that doesn't know his history is doomed to relive it. In 1977, shortly after taking office, Jimmy Carter did a study. The study was called The Darkening of America. And the study found out, now remember, Andrew Young was Jimmy Carter's Secretary of State. So Jimmy Carter got this passed as a Democrat, as being this progressive Democrat who was going to do things. And we were in a time, the closest we came to, I would say, being united as a people was during the 70s, the early to mid 70s, after the tumultuous 60s. The assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, so forth and so on. So all of these people that were doing things, making moves, all of them kind of disappeared during the 60s. And as a result, we had this this kind of slingshot effect of the pendulum swinging to the opposite way, where all of these programs were created to um, help us. And it was the most that had been done since Reconstruction, right after slavery. um, and then things start to go haywire. So under the Carter administration, this study proved that by the year 1999, 2000, turn of the century, that America would be darker, that white people would be the minority. Now, truth be told, they've always been the minority, um, but with the influx of um, politicians, black businesses, black businessmen, like Mr. Johnson with Johnson Hair Products, and he also owned Ebony and Jet magazine, which are kind of fading now. but back then they were powerhouse publications for us by us. Um, we had all of these things, AfroSheen, UltraSheen, all of these companies that came on the forefront and was making money because we are the primary spenders when it comes to capitalism and being consumers. So what America started to see that we were making moves, we were moving forward, and then things started to go haywire. Then we started to see things like songs, and I keep talking about this song, "Go Away, Little Boy, Go Away, Little Boy," where this woman is talking to her lover who is unemployed and telling him, "Go away. If you can't get your ish together, you just go away." And then he starts to make these sexual advances on her, and she says, "Go ahead now. Don't kiss my earlobe like that. Don't bite my neck like that. I know your moves." And then it goes into this thing where the song terminates with this rap, if you will, and she says, "Okay." So she accepts him instead of putting him out. This prowess of this black man and his sexuality, his masculinity won her over. And she finishes the song with, "Well, do you think you could get a job by next Thursday?" And as a kid growing up in the 70s, when I could start a job on Tuesday and get three other offers on Wednesday or Thursday. And at the time, all I was really looking at doing was sales because I knew I just wanted to do something that put me in the spot in the limelight. All of the pretty boys in school wind up being shoe salesmen because we worked at the Butlers, the Bakers, the Chandlers, the lady shoe stores, and you got a chance to feel on a woman's legs, and sometimes you could look up a dress and she would, I mean, we're gonna leave that alone, but it was the perfect job for a young man finding himself. So these jobs were so plentiful. um, I had this one lady that I sold so many pairs of shoes and handbags and I would walk up to a woman and act like I had known her for 20 years. As soon as she would come into the store, I would walk up on her and make everybody else think that she was already my customer. I'm like, "Hey, Denise, how you doing?" I says, "I got just what you're looking for. Remember those red pumps I told you about?" And the lady would look at me and I just wink by and she'd just go along with me because that's kind of a little handsome dude with the big afro. So they went along with the rap. So I did really well. But it was a time when everybody seemed like they could find a job. But why there were a lot of good times. There were a lot of James Evanses. There were a lot of men with families for whatever reason couldn't either find a job, find a productive job where they could take care of their families, or keep a job. So when I started to see what was going on, I went from living in this bubble, this cocoon, into moving out into the real world and starting to see that how I was living was not indicative of how most black men was living, especially with families. And then once I started to take care of my family, I started to run into some of those same prejudices that my dad and my grandfather had to deal with. And then some of these things that had been lurking in my consciousness, things that I observed as a child, hanging with my dad, my grandfather, now these things were coming to light. They were being triggered, and now I was remembering these things, and they were starting to make sense. But they were so provocative that it started this anger inside of me. And I said all of that to say this: as a community, I could go from one side of New Orleans to the other side of New Orleans. I talked about being in the military and getting confronted in downtown LA by three Crips, but I talked myself out of it. We walk around LA for the most part, and these guys jumped and they ran up on these other guys standing on the corner. Boys are like, "Oh man, shit about to go down. We need to cross the street." And the dude said, "Man, you ain't shit." They said, "You ain't shit." I said, "Well, what you gonna do?" He said, "What you gonna do?" My man popped the trunk and pulled out this linoleum, and they start breakdancing. I was like, "Oh shit!" Just imagine if every beef was settled with some breakdancing. You know what I mean? So I thought it was cool that even in LA at the time, this was before the influx of crack cocaine. You know, at first the beef was about y'all kill Tyrone, no y'all kill, Lefty or whatever, whatever. So they were more personal. Once you brought in the drugs, this influx of drugs, now you got Crips going against Crips and the Grape Street Crips going against the, Compton Crips and the Slauson Bloods going to, so it was just crazy. And when I got accosted, I'm talking to this brother and I'm talking all this black pride stuff. And this brother was looking at me, damn, will this nigga ever shut up? I was doing this and I talked him down a 357 Magnum in my face. And I played it off like, yo, man, let me check that out. Let me check that out. And I'm reaching for the pistol. And he's like, this nigga, he ain't scared, And I'm like, yo, he's like, what's your set, cuz? Like, what's your set, man? I'm high and tight. I'm mean, lean, and green. Uncle Sam's misguided children. So I'm talking and I'm yapping and I'm talking. This brother's like, oh. So I killed him with words. And once I broke him down, then I started speaking all this black pride to him. And what was funny is I saw these cats one more time and it was like, yo, Black Pride. So I was like, hey, what's up? So there was a way where, you could be smart enough to walk the street without having incidents, you know? And then things changed. Because after Carter, he started it, and then Reagan took it to a whole nother level. Because Reagan was the governor of California when there was the Black Panthers. Reagan was the governor of California when all of these programs, these progressive programs of the 70s were advantageous to us as people of color. The Hispanics, back then they were, a lot of them were called Chicanos and Mexicans and what have you, um, brothers, um, and even the poor white kids because they realized they were just like us. They were scrambling trying to make ends meet. They were trying to keep their head above water. So there was a enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of relationship. Though it was kind of strained, that's what was happening. Now we are at a point where we are our own worst enemy. Maybe it's the coming together of this 30, 40 years of conditioning, this Pavlovian conditioning that makes me not be able to get along with the lady that I'm interested in and make her not be able to get along with me. Because in the final analysis, all a woman really wants, and if I'm wrong, ladies, jump in, is to A, be respected, to be heard, have a voice, and have somebody listen to them. Even when they speak those 14 female languages, and I make light of it. All a black man wants is a woman that he could trust that's gonna have his back come with me. And brothers, if I'm wrong, if I'm speaking out of turn, y'all jump in too. So right now, I'm throwing this out there, but I want to hear your voices on it. I want to hear your input on it. Why are we at this point of such self hate that it's resulting in annihilation? So that's the question. Now, what brought this on? In New Orleans in less than a 2-week period, 23 lives were extinguished, erased. All 23 of these people were under the age of 20. I think the oldest was 19. In Detroit, we got the same thing happening. In Chicago, as soon as the temperature goes up 10 degrees, it seems like 30 people get killed over a weekend. So, no matter what community you're in, the urban areas where we live, and this is what pisses me off, because now they're gentrifying our neighborhoods, but the areas that become gentrified are safe. The areas that we live in, the areas that we grew up in, that's grew and grow at the same time. Because we grew up, our parents grew up, and our kids are growing up. And now the streets are no longer safe. And then on top of that, here in Florida, this this community that's populated with um, Hispanics. And I think these people in this particular neighborhood, these two families were both of Honduran descent. And for whatever reason, they have a habit of shooting off their guns. And one family walked over to the guy and said, "Hey, man, look, could you like stop? My kids are trying to sleep." And then they called the police 4 times. And the cops sent nobody out. And then this guy goes into his house, picks up his AR-15, goes into his neighbor's house who were complaining. All they asked him to do was to stop shooting so close to the house so that their children could sleep. And I don't know what kind of sticky icky he was smoking. I don't know what kind of tequila he was drinking, but he went up in there and he killed 4 people, including the woman and her. I think I want to say the kid was 8 years old or 8 months old. And then this kid in Atlanta goes into a room with his mom, and I don't know if he didn't think it was being served fast enough or what. And this idiot goes off, killing people and shooting people. So this is nothing more than annihilation, self-hate that leads to annihilation, where we don't respect ourselves enough to look at the kid in the street as our own. To look at the brother and the sister and saying that's a nice couple. Nowadays, what's gonna happen is they see you walking with your girl, your wife, your daughter, and she's attractive. Once upon a time, that was hands off. Nowadays, they're gonna disrespect her in front of you. And the funny part about it, when I grew up, I got a scar on my face. Well, a kid told me, I kid you not, I was about 8 or 9 years too pretty. And he broke a bottle and stabbed me in my face. And I was so bewildered, I couldn't even fight. As he started to run off, I couldn't even pursue it. I couldn't believe what was happening. I went home and it wound up being 3 stitches. So self-hate has always been around, but the next time I saw this kid, I wanted to fight him. And the thing back in the day was this: if you and me got beef, first of all, we didn't have beef, we had a problem with each other. Yo, man, you got a problem with me? You can meet me at the gate 3:15, and we could go for what you know. It was as simple as that. We went to here, and if I got the better of him and I saw him on the park, I was ready for Ali Frazier too. Because one of two things happen. Either your boys will hype you up, jeff you up, psych you out. Oh man, he got lucky. I know you could beat him. And you're like, yeah, if I'd have just did this. So when we saw you the second time, there was understanding. Either we're gonna fight again or we're gonna squash it. If you squash it, you dapped each other up. That didn't mean you became best friends. It just means that we had a mutual respect. You're a man about yours, I'm a man about mine. So let's keep it moving. If you got start going with the girl that I wanted to get with, we were mature enough to realize that the girl didn't belong to me or you. Ultimately, she made up her mind who she wanted to be with. And once she made up her mind, we respected that. No more. No more. Nowadays, if you have a problem with someone, it automatically escalates to the word beef. Beef to me means be right back. And when you come back, you're coming back with that don't make you a man. My brother and my brother-in-law, my cousins, they said, no, 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 no. Put the stick down. Put the bottle down. Put the brick down. If you want to be a man, go from here. And after it was all over, even the older guys say, all right, y'all cool? Go ahead and squash that shit. So I have been talking about getting back to basics, folks. If we are going back to basics, we've got to learn how to love ourselves first before we love anybody else. You can't give me love if you don't have none to give. You can't love on me if you can't love on yourself. And more importantly, no matter how much I love you, I can't love you enough for you to feel adequate if you don't love yourself. And I think I've really been pissed about this brat thing. So I've been looking into this. And one of the ladies, Alicia, responded, and she posted a couple stories for me. And I'm gonna repost those stories. And they talked about only 2% of applicants of color are accepted as donors. So my question to her was, how do they vet? What's the criteria that they use? And she said they talk about two or three generations of this, that, and the other, and so forth and so on. Um, I say this is just like all of the tests that's designed by people other than us, that hold us to a different standard than they hold themselves. So luckily, I've never had that problem. But I do remember a friend of mine asking me once to be a sperm donor. And I had a problem with it because the man in me that fathered children, and I didn't have the control over what they eat, where they went to school, what time they went to bed, how they dressed, the things they got involved in. I wanted to teach my kids to play music because I played music. I wanted to teach my kids to play music because music theory teaches you how to think. It's nothing but numbers, and improvising is learning how to expand your head. And that's what I wanted to teach my children. And I didn't have that. Once the family unit fell apart, and you're young, and this girl is young, and you have all of these ideas of what it's going to be like, and then you get together and there's nothing like that. And then you have because I fathered kids with more than one woman. I always make jokes about being the prototype for ghetto fabulous. My mom tried to tell me. So all of these things have brought us to this perfect storm that is self hate and annihilation. So you got these two women, and I don't care what your sexual orientation and makeup is. The problem that I have is with us helping somebody else to get rid of us. I always talk about the duality of my DNA. My mother's mother being of a African heritage, Creole heritage, and my mother's father being American Indian. And as twisted as it is, I know more about the African slave side than I know about the American Indian side. Why? Because the American Indian side were the indigenous people. So I started when I fill out any paperwork and they ask about race, I don't put Afro American, I don't put African American, I don't put I used to check all of these boxes. Now I check other and then I put black indigenous because I don't know enough about the Indian heritage because the Andrew Jacksons, the Andrew Johnsons, these people that call themselves the founding fathers with their trails of tears annihilated, erased a whole entire group of people. So now all that we have is these little remnants of what used to be. And when I think about what has happened to the red man or the Native American, I think about where we're heading if we allow them. There's something wrong when we live in a country where it's as simple as this. I don't care what the black man name was. And I always made jokes that Bill Clinton was blacker than Barack Obama. But I promise you, if Barack would have failed at one business, Barack would have been unable to run for the president of the United States. Now we've got a viable candidate who tried to overthrow the government, who has 34 felony charges with just one arrest. And he has all these other things pending, but he's still a viable candidate in this place we call America. So if anybody's going to do it, we got to do it for ourselves. I hate to preach to you tonight. I know I'm not telling you nothing you don't already know. I know you're asking me, then what do we do about it? I say it starts right here with each person teaching another one person, and that one person teaching another person. And pretty soon, each one reaching one, each one teaching one becomes exponential. Now we've got a new situation where we're starting to feel like a community. So when I look at you and I say good morning, you don't feel like you got to put your butt on your shoulders and ignore me. And I don't feel so disrespected that I got to call you out your name. Like, half I wasn't even trying to talk to you. I was just being, I come from a time where, if you passed on the street, you say, good morning. You speak to each other. It was a common courtesy. It wasn't an invitation for sex or certainly not marriage. So get over yourself. And now, brothers, when their eyes meet, you got to quickly size the brother up. Is this nigga been institutionalized? Where he gonna like, what you looking at me? Do I got a mean mug? Do I have to show him that, yo, you don't want this? Or can I greet the brother like, hey, man, what's up? Right on. If we're getting back to basics, we got to find that inner trust. But it starts with loving ourselves enough to be vulnerable enough to love each other. So that's all I got for you tonight, folks. It's quick. It sounds simple. All it is step one. I love me some meat too, Jan. So do me a favor. As I get ready to get out of here, I'm going to remind you again. I came up with this great idea. When I advertise the show, I'm going to put two advertisements. One is going to be the link to my YouTube. Go to my YouTube. Go to my YouTube. Subscribe. Ring the bell so you will be notified when I put new content up there. Share some of this with other folks. If we share TikToks, if we share recipes, if we share all of the things that we find so noteworthy that we feel it needs to be shared, let's share this as well. And if you do that, that'll be a step in the right direction. And when you find other positive content, here's the thing that gets me. And I'm going to say this and I'm done. When the white man says something about us that's glowing and complimentary, we repost it. See, even white people say this. But when we say it and we're black, it don't get a lot of likes. It don't get a lot of shares or reposting. So share it for me. And I know you're scared because the few little nickels we have, the little place that we call home, this, that, and the other, we're afraid of losing those things. But let me tell you something. Another thing I say before I leave every Thursday night. We start dying the day we were born. So don't be so afraid to die that we forget to live for a purpose. So I will see you next week right here. And hopefully I can stick to the script. Same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. And always important, I wish you love. I wish you peace. 2 fingers to the sky. And like your man, hair grease. Thank you, people. I love you to death. And a damn thing you can do about it. But love me back. Love yourself first.